Hello and good day. This is Cameron speaking to you from heart of my experience. Apart from that, from my understanding, that it tells me the religion of Jesus has become different than religions of other prophets. All prophets have been taking messages from God, relaying them to people. By their holy books or holy words. Their God or their bosses were living somewhere in the universe, controlling the entire universe down to the finest details of living. This includes the other universe beside the solar system. The whole works, Big Bangs, you name it, it has been created by the holy created. The words have been coming to them through the space unto people. Jesus, according to the history, was no longer a messenger. He was actually a relative to God, the Son of God. Through Christianity. A God in form of material. To be worshipped. To take orders from. Instead of being rewarded for our excellent behavior and morals understandings, going to heavens or oppositely to hell, which was in the skies somewhere. With Christianity has become on the planet Earth. The heaven and hell is on the planet. You do a good deed, you get awarded here. You do a wrong deed, you get punished here. In other religions that all connected to the skies, the punishment and rewards are to be applied in the skies, in heaven and hells. worshipping their gods, the spiritual gods, was rewarded in heaven. Worshipping Jesus on the planet Earth makes you rich. It is obvious that if you worship a material, then you certainly will become rich. Okay, so this was the core of democracy, based on material. And it is why in a democratic world, spiritual words and places, they have no bearings. Only what can be forensically admissible in the court of laws, the constitutional laws, where spirit cannot influence, because the spirit cannot be in the democratic system, makes people to view it differently. Millions of people to view a spiritual world, all have different opinions. It will be confusing at large, where in constitutional laws the words must be materials. So everybody can view it in exactly the same way. That is why people whom have brought the laws into the constitutions, they had to see those words before they could agree on it. If they were to bring the law democratically, not dictated. In the law of Holy Spirit, it is not a matter of material, and it is not a matter of viewing same way. It is a matter of interpretation. In the court of holy religions, it can only be a matter of interpretation, who can define more skillfully the reference book, the book of the law, which is their holy book. In democratic, the book of law is the constitution that requires the lawyer, the prosecutor, and the judge to know it masterly. Not the holy book. It is not a matter of interpretation. Therefore, in the law of Constitution, we don't have interpretation and we don't have explanations without any requirement. In the law of spirit, we don't have such black and white system to run. It's all a matter of interpretation. The words in any holy book that is written some thousands of years ago, 1,000+ years ago, the words were very limited, therefore very general, meaning one word applied many people of many characters. The word hope, for instance, for poor and rich, healthy and sick, young and old, male and female, different cultures, different colors of race, and different characters, all meant the same. However, they all saw it differently. Same by force, differently by volunteer. Therefore, it will be the matter for lawyer, a spiritual lawyer, the spiritual prosecutor, and the spiritual judge. Between a lawyer and prosecutor, the skill of ability to interpret those words to their best suitability for their accused or defendant is a matter of only importance. Who can interpret the words better than the counterpart, deeper than counterpart, more realistical than the counterpart, or looking like a realistic counterpart. What comes from spirit, it goes down with spirit. Okay. Now, in the court of constitutional law, the system is opposite. The lawyer, the prosecutor, they battle the accused or defendant in terms of black and white. The questions have answers in yes or no, unless it's required by the lawyer or the prosecutor for further explanation in purpose of their interest, their own interest. Excuse me. In the purpose of their own interest, meaning the prosecutor will ask the accused for explanation in order to prosecute him even deeper. And likewise for the lawyer to require explanation from his defendant or her defendant to explain further to his or her innocence. They cannot imply. It is against the law. When a lawyer implies, meaning dictates a word or more, then it is for the skilled prosecutor to protest that, and for the judge to recognize it or not. And likewise for the lawyer to protest if a prosecutor implies, which is a mildest form of dictatorship. Therefore, if you want to see where is the backyard of democracy, you will have to see it in the court of constitutional law. You will see how it is in black and white, much more than you can see in a spiritual world. In public, you see implications after implications, and nobody is to protest. This is the way people live. But in a courtroom, the story changes. Yet both public and the courtroom follow the democratic system. It's the same, very same political system or democratic system. We know dictating start from next to zero, and it can go on infinitely as much as you would like it to. The mildest of all form of dictatorship or dictating is to imply. You will limit the receiver's freedom of choice. Bit harder than that, you tell the person what to do or how to think. Number 3 is you force a person. Number 4, you fight it. Number 5, you take weapons. Number 6, you take gangs, all the way to pressing the nuclear button. The final form of dictating to one person. Because it's only one person. At the end of the drive, it's down to one person. Is it not the biggest explosion in the world starts with one spark? If you pull the trigger of the gun, if you see the playback of the spark traveling, you can put a piece of paper in the process of the jumping spark from one point to another to create that. Furthermore, process of leading to explosion, you stop the gun firing and damaging a building. There you will have to repair the building. Is that easier, or finding a piece of paper and logging it in the sensitive part of the process or early stage of the process, part of the process? Which one is easier? Dictatorship, it works in all form except voluntarily, conceptively voluntarily, meaning without any sense of implication. That is the truth of the person's desire. In public, we are far away from that. Yet in the court of the constitutional law, that is the only way it works. Because those rules that are made from words, they have been agreed by majority of people to be inserted in the book of constitutional law. To choose the word to be inserted, they will stage one have to see all from same angle of the view, from same point of view, all identical, and then the place to use that material, agreement achieved, word inserted in the book. And all have to obey that. There aren't any words in a democratic book of the law that cannot be seen. It cannot work that way. A democratic system works on material because everybody can see. If it is based on spirit, then people cannot agree unless they are forced to. So on this planet, from a democratic point of view, there is no room for spirit. And why should there be? The reality we speak of, the fact we speak of, the formation that we would like to live in and recommend others to live in instead of dreamlands, is the world with material. What we can see represents us the fact. What we don't see, it represents us with the spirit. And yet, if anybody gives us an example of what we don't see, is it inexistent or it isn't, to refute that, all we have to say, we accept that it is, because everybody sees it. if a if a for example, if an object in a remote area that I only heard about that, not seen it, okay, and I accept that exists, then that too coordinates with everybody else's answer. They all will say yes, it exists. The difference between something that is there and we don't see, than something is not there and we don't see. To further nail this question is what we don't see, nobody has seen. The viewing that invisible object cannot be object if it's invisible, but we call it, we say it, that invisible object, just to explain it a bit more comfortably, as a matter of convenience. Then everybody's view towards that unseen, invisible object. But if an object exists and not many people seen it, they all seems like feeling it exists. If they agree that exists, then everybody sees it the same way. For instance, President Obama of United States, I haven't seen it. You haven't, sorry, I haven't seen him. You haven't seen him. Not many people have seen him. Then you turn around and ask me, okay, you haven't seen him. That means he doesn't exist? I say, no, he exists. You say, why? I say, because everybody else see him. And they all can describe him the same way. All have exactly the same view. The measurement is identical. Fact and oh dear, dear. Mr. President Obama, I didn't mean to joke with you. Anyway, sorry about that remark. You are slender instead. I think that's the right word I'm choosing. I'm not too sure. Okay, so, but yet we can all agree exactly the same way we can view. But the spirit that nobody has seen, we can't see the same way, unless it's specified. Viewing an object, it requires specifications, whether we know it or we don't. It can be measured. Is a reality, is the fact. They are the only facts when we use the word in fact or in reality. Is the things can be seen, is on the planet. Beyond the planet, if nobody has seen, then I am sorry. I am not going to say I can agree with that, because I don't know what I am talking about. It'd be a dream. It requires tons of explanation. Therefore, in holy spiritual laws, it requires lots of explanations. Pardon. Whereas in the law of constitution, explanation is only by requirement. The answers are black and white. That is the way life is. As simple as that. It is yes or it is no. If you know it, then you will answer it either yes or no. If you don't know, then you're looking for explanations. You explain from here till Timbuktu, yeah. So, when you drop one drop of a poison in an ocean, what do? Have you poisoned that ocean or you haven't? This is the way you will be subject to questioning in a court of constitutional law. Did you or did you not? They won't allow you any explanation unless required by your lawyer to explain when it comes to his turn of questioning to suit the lawyer and the defendant. And even that, it doesn't come to registration because it will be a matter of jury to accept the explanation. But for the court, all the questions are answered by yes or no. So you would have to say, yes, I did poison that ocean. This is a inspector asks you, prosecutor, asks you. And then when it comes to your lawyer, then your lawyer asks you for explanation. How weak was the poison? How little it was the poison? And then it brings the expertise to see how much effect scientifically that one weak, smallish drop of so-called poison in compared to billions and billions of gallons of water in the ocean. How much effect it could. Then the prosecutors, the expertise says nothing, it just doesn't matter. You see? But the answer is that yes, you did poison it. But in the spiritual is different. It's all by explanation, and it's rather, interpretation. In the law, everything is black and white, digital. Marks the life become digital. Where did they all come from? We are based on material. You look around yourself. All the materials you see are made in factories. Everything. The lamp, the bed, the cover, the clothes, the shirts, the chairs, the cars, even the trees are being set in an industrial way. They have to be 6 meters from each other, 6 meters and 3.5 inches separate from each other every direction. They have to be shaped this way, have to face the sun, blah, 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 blah. This kind of tree has to be here, that kind of tree has to be there. When you create pollution, the nature environment of that area is different, regardless how hard the nature tries. It's always perfect. A machine makes a perfect order. Doesn't matter if it rains or sunny or whatever, it doesn't affect. We do not see the nature, yet we speak of natural. What natural? The baby is born in the tube. The baby is grown in the environment of the house, which is made of material, not in a jungle, not in a garden, not in a riverside with the birds. Never seen an elephant. Okay? The baby grows that way into a full-size person and then talks to you about nature, what he knows about, how much he knows about the nature. There are no natures. We don't see them. Wherever I look, it's all artificial. Even the cloud is different cloud from one polluted area than the other area by the sea. Okay? Not to dispute any of this, but this is simply the way we have come to. So these materials is the core of our reality. These are the ones we will have to live by. They make the rules for us. We make the rules by using them. Nothing else. Remember, before, people used to think the earth was flat. And you could also see their painting and drawing lacking 2 dimensions, all flat. A table used to be drawn with 4 legs on the same front. 1, 2, 3, 4. There was no depth in their imagination. We have depth in our imagination. We can draw it that way. We saw it, the earth goes round and it's got a depth. And from there, everything has to have depth. If it is 2-dimension, is not for me. Thinking 2-dimension is for primitive people. They did it. But since then, we moved on. We developed our brain to see 3 dimensions, to view 3 dimension. So 3D subject is the base for human democracy. Now, the effect of spiritual life, thinking, words in the spiritual countries brings the very lack of democracy. We see that. In the extremely spiritual system of a country, you will see extremely democratic system running those countries. How? It's simple. Because the 2-dimension life in a spiritual world does not have the sufficient specification for us modern people to see it, to view it. We cannot accept 2 dimensions anymore. We don't know enough. We are used to know enough about anything, objects, to be able to accept after viewing it, whether in our mind, whether in present. When is 2 dimensions is not enough, we suspect. We can't accept. We are not used to it that way. The 2-dimension world of a spirit which is in the skies and it hasn't got a depth, is not an object, is a spirit. It has the word. Word is the very words that we think of, the very words that we speak of, the very words we write and expect it to become material. Because when you speak or you write or you draw or any form of bringing it outside of your mind, you begin to materialize your thought. The thoughts that simply is made of words, nothing else whatsoever, none, zilch. Whatever there is in your mind, they all have names. The only difference is some of those words they have 2D, some of them they have 3Ds. In a democratic life, they all has to have 3Ds because, as I said, it will have a common sense. It makes a common sense. No common sense requires explanations, takes time, takes confusion, and takes debate and disagreement. Excuse me. So, you see, and that's why when they try to materialize a spirit and a spiritual world into a material is much harder. Now I begin to smile. You can tell. Because I'm too up to something. This devilish smile you call it. Okay. So it's harder. Now, if you try hard to materialize a 2-dimension thoughts, words, world into a material, it's difficult. If you try too hard, you still can't do it. They don't mix. You can't have 2-dimension word turn it into 3-dimension object. You want to make an apple of something it doesn't exist or lacks too much specification, or you have, if you had a piece of wood you might be able to turn it into an apple or a piece of cheese. But if there is nothing, if you don't have access, you can't reach it to play around and shape it, then how are you going to do it? becomes an obsession if you try hard. Obsession, 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 until you become fanatic. And then go crazy. Then do the crazy things. Now you see, religious fanatics are crazy because they try so hard to materialize the spirit that they know, the heaven, the hell. They're heroes of the past, or the heroes they have been told of, or the heroes they never existed. They're trying to materialize ghosts so they can use the power to convince you that they were right. Doesn't work. You try too hard, go crazy and do crazy things. Just because they can't turn it into reality. Okay. But in reality, a piece of wood, if you can't turn it to apple, you can turn it to a stick of something, a bat, to use it for a cricket or something. Make a tools with it, and then dig the ground to put the apple seed in it. But the spirit, there is nothing you can do with it. Absolutely nothing. Only forcing the people to accept it, and then even they go crazy about it, and all you do is just collecting their money. That's what is called a 3D democracy. It's based on 3D. Now the word geolinguistics, I invented it for my own school of influence of a language spoken in a country, of the influence of that language over the economy, social, and politics of that country. How they speak, how is related directly to the people of that country, and the country of those people. How they speak is how their country is. Now we know Spanish is a very advanced country. Now we see which countries they speak. South America. That we see the effect of language of Spanish speaking country in South of America, how those countries live. Now, to put it in a black and white and stop cat and mouse games, I go directly to a point. If one of South American countries' native were to speak English, for instance, I don't mean learning English in college, I mean that country was native, was brought up as English. Okay, you can see the difference, can't you? You will be able to see the difference. So the effect of a language is I will give lots of examples. Lots of examples. Okay. Now you see, say, Islamic language in Islamic countries. I don't use the word Arabic or Arabs because I don't think they are Arabs anymore. even though as a country, it still is an Islamic country, because they are based on those terms. Just to remind you, when you're using a native country, therefore that means that country has a culture. Any country, any race is not without culture. Okay? But whenever you find a country that hasn't got a race, then you know that country is religious. And vice versa. Whenever you find a religious country, you know that country doesn't have a culture. Because, as simple as that, religion and culture don't mix. They defy each other. Because culture is from 3 dimensions and religion is by 2 dimensions. Further meaning is culture is based on practice and religion is based on philosophy. Equally, ideology. We do not find a stronger philosophy and ideology than communism. I witnessed communism in my life, and I saw how they spread their wings from coast to coast. They penetrated every living person in this planet, sweetly too. Except America. Even they went there. Excuse me again, sorry. Okay? Even they influenced it, but America took a drastic measure to defy that, and they succeeded. But it was only America still that didn't have communism. It was outlawed, illegal. But other nations, all of them have been influenced by that. Including European countries, all of Africa, all of Asia, China, Russia, the biggest country on the planet, the China, the India, all the countries, wherever it went, communism becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. The ideology of it was Marxism. If it wasn't for America to stop it, it would have gone. The entire South America, Cuba, you name it. And the principle of communism was to defy religion. We know that. So there wouldn't be a room for communism and religion. It would have to be only communism. If it had it stayed on, religion would have to pack and go home forever. Be abolished, smashed into pieces like a shattering glass, like a communist itself did it. Communism did it, religion is to follow that. Have no doubt about that. One day you will see my word. Religion is shattering, is a philosophy, and all philosophy will change. will shatter. Even the Albert Einstein, this threshold of physics, nuclear physics or space or mathematics or whatever, even that eventually are falling down. Sigmund Freud, the mother of psychology, coming down, one after another. We learn that ideology and philosophy are temporarily, whether 1 year, whether 1,000 years, doesn't make much any difference. It will fall. Already see the influence of religion in countries. And now the English language is already anti-spiritual language, because the King Henry VIII separated the Church of England from Church of Rome. It was the Rome that was ruling the Europe. Can you imagine that? Every king had to take orders from Rome, indirectly. They all have their own representatives deep in heart of every kingdom in the Europe. And the Muslims had it in the heart of every king in the eastern countries and other countries, and Jewish and all the other countries. The religion had their influence. But not since the English came on board, then people start seeing the life in a different view. The language the language of the English helped the democracy to build. William Shakespeare brought the choice of words, introduced the people to have choices, which wasn't available before. It was available to rich people. It was available to the people who were the key holders of the boundaries. They were part of the boundaries in music, in language, in painting, in writing, in poems, in everything. There was a boundaries that the freedom of choice in words, because the availability of it made the English language to find the choice, preference. That was due to the way they spoke. The natural form of speaking in English language was to form a word with tongue, not by facial, like Latins, not like a guttural by Islamic nations. Hence, the letters that English language can create, it is hard for other languages. Hence, letter L for lemon is, all the Oriental countries can't say that, and French, they can't say that either. They can say it on a single letters at beginning, but when it becomes double, it changes into ya. They can't say. The weakness of the language is that you see the French was for thousands of years was the number one language in the world. In a matter of 50 years, it lost its importance, and it went. Now the only France, Belgium, Monaco, and some part of the Swiss, and some part of the Austria in the high mountains, and some some poor countries in Africa, they speak English. They don't speak English in America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, Britain, and few other small English language, or India as well. Okay, and now if a Chinese company wants to negotiate with an American country over their transaction, they have to exchange letters and emails in English, not in Chinese. English is the money language. And they're all coming to that point. The sooner, the better. They're all coming that way. So it is a language. And after William Shakespeare's introducing the choice of words in a matter of preference, that you prefer something that's something else, you prefer one word to use and then the other word, which wasn't. There was no preference. Preference was forbidden. Only preference was for the well-educated people through religious exclusive rights to own, because everybody had to be religious to learn education through religious sectors. They weren't public schools. It was all schools and universities. Everybody was learning. Well, I don't know about so much further education, but certainly schools were learning to read and to write. The literacy was exclusively right to religious people. We are not going into the Spanish Inquisitions and how Hitler received his ideas from God to revenge the religious outlaws, the Jews, and so on. There are, millions of people committed crimes of small to large size because they got a message from the spiritual world. Okay, and now we see that in my country, Iran, how the spiritual leaders are become fanatic. They don't have the flexibility to negotiate to anything. If the cup of tea is not terribly full up, okay, half of it will do, 3/4 of it will do, and so on. Or if it's too much sugar, okay, have a little sugar, have something else. They don't have any form of flexibility, dry as a bone. This is how the mind is been studying and learning and living and teaching, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. Only the spirit. Far and away from reality. And you see all the rich leaders in the Muslim countries. I don't say Arabia doesn't exist, because these Muslim countries, they don't have culture. They all have religion, Islam. And Islam is not a culture. They're trying to culturalize it and creates obsession. They're trying to turn it into culture. It creates obsession. Now you tell me in Iraq, in Syria, in Morocco, in Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, and the entire South Gulf countries, nations, Tunisia, Algeria, what is their culture? If particularly the ones are more Muslims, what is their culture? Or to pray and to preach, to dictate. Is it dictating form of culture? No. How can you dictate him? Culture is practice. When a leather person who makes, like Italy, the painting becomes a culture, winemaking becomes a culture, leatherworks become a culture, tailoring becomes a culture, car designing and building designing, all that things become cultures. How can a dictatorship become a culture? It's a joke. How can a praying all day long become a culture? You can just bending up, bending down, bending up, bending down, bending up, bending down. Is that a culture? No. Those countries is what they practice at the moment is a religious terms, not the production terms. You see, you have to here weigh them, and which side is heavier than that side to be yes or no. There is not, you can't explain, is it culture or it isn't culture. You see, at the end of the drive, we have one alternative only, to be or not to be, to is or not to is. You see, I'm not asking for your explanation. I'm asking you to see Iraq, does it have culture or doesn't have culture? You have to go and weigh it all and put them on two sides of the scales and see which one is heavier and take that side. A realistic person would do that. Unless you want to see one thing, they practice culture, and million things they don't practice. It's not a culture, it's only philosophy. And then that feeling makes you to say, oh yes, they do. It has to be scientific. Then I will be asking you, what is it you see? And then I answer you, what is it you don't see? What you don't see. All right? So they're trying so hard to practice, and it adds up to confusion. Because when it's founded on 2D, then it produces 2D. You can't have 2D into 3D. And therefore, a language does have an effect on the country. Okay? Because the language, the word in the language is made of 2Ds and creates confusion. And that confusion reflects on the political, economy, and social aspects of those countries. Okay. That should cover it for now. Okay. I'll leave it at that now. Alright? Thank you all very much, if there are anybody. Alright. See you soon. Take care. Bye.